Ladies and gentlemen ministers, Mr. Governor of Attica region, dear Nikos Hardalias, I was so impressed by all your projects and by your excellent French. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared for that. But I'll practice my Greek for when you come to Paris. Madam Ambassador from France, dear Laurence Oyer, ladies and gentlemen, Kalimera. It's a great honor for me to speak to you today in Athens, the cradle of democracy, the arts and the sciences, but also a place of reflection on the age-old interaction between man and nature. Over the centuries, Athens has demonstrated that building a city is not merely about arranging stones. It is a political act that transcends time. It is here today that we gather to discuss the sustainable development strategies of Europe's major metropolitan areas and regions. Because yes, our homes are places to live. In ancient Greek, oikos, the root of the word ecology, are being hit by climate change. Faced with this implacable fact, my responsibility as the president of Paris region since 2015 is to discern winnable bets, and then act resolutely to win them. Climate change is an existential threat, but it won't be solved with slogans, unrealistic targets, or a sprinkling of good intentions. To make sense of it, we need to start from the facts. As Hannah Arendt taught us, freedom is a farce if it's not the facts that are the subjects of debate. But what are the facts, however disturbing they may be? Our modern world rests on 4 fundamental pillars: fossil fuels, steel production, cement manufacturing, and ammonia synthesis. Without these 4 elements, there would be no buildings, no bridges, no fertilizers to feed 8 billion human beings. But the tragedy is that these same pillars are precisely at the root of our environmental changes. Like in a Mikado, we have to replace these pillars without the whole thing collapsing. And the Mikado just keeps getting bigger. Take cement, for example. In the space of 2 years, China has produced almost as much cement as the United States did in the whole of the 20th century. In 2 years, the whole of the 20th century. And yet, cement is one of the materials whose manufacture emits the most CO2 in the world. And this is not an isolated case. After 2 decades of efforts and massive investments in renewable energies, fossil fuels still account for 82% of the world's energy supply, compared with 86% in 2000, 86 to 82. Massive investments. Worse still, the consumption of fossil fuels has increased by 45% in absolute terms. These figures remind us of a fundamental reality. The energy transition is a multi-dimensional, complex, and very likely intergenerational process. We haven't even completed the first energy transition from traditional biomass to fossil fuels, and we already have to embark in a new one. And this leads me to another conviction, which is that whatever efforts we make to mitigate climate change, we have no choice but to adapt to the unpredictable world that is coming. On this first aspect of mitigation, I would like to talk about 3 bets in the sense of Pascal's wager. 3 bets that I've made and that we are well on the way of winning. The first and most fundamental bet is to have set the Île de France region, the Paris region, the objective of becoming a zero net artificialization region by 2050. Zero net artificialization region, even before the law required it. We have therefore defined and passed an unprecedented regional development strategy that maps out a path for developing our regions and our jobs, while at the same time sparing our resources and our precious land. And we are in the process of winning this land-saving gamble, since Île de France is home to more than 18% of the French population, almost 1/3 of the country's GDP, on less than 5% of the land. Of the country's built-up land. Preserving our farmland, forests and green spaces, which now account for more than 3/4 of our region, is the mother of all battles. And we're going to win it. My second bet is the public transport revolution. I have been working on this public transport revolution for the last 8 years. By the end of 2025, we will be the first European metropolis with completely carbon-free public transport in the densely populated area. We have modernized our rolling stock and electrified all the lines that until recently ran on diesel. We plan to bring more than 300 kilometers of new rail lines into service between now and 2030. 300 kilometers of new metro lines. There will be metros for Paris, but also metro for the suburbs, suburb-to-suburb trams, transport on demand, and express coaches for rural areas. We are investing 400 million in cycling to triple its daily use and have 750 kilometers of safe routes by 2030. And we've exceeded our targets for the deployment of electric charging points. My third bet is the Île de France subsoil. The residential sector accounts for 30% of our gas emissions. And natural gas, which we need to move away from gradually, is still the main energy consumed in the Paris region. But we're lucky in that we have warm water aquifers beneath our feet. Warm water aquifers. So we have decided to provide massive support to the sector, backing 300 projects to go and get the hot water from the soil. This is the guarantee of an energy that is carbon-free, local, and with no need for transport or storage. So the Île de France region now boasts to have the highest density of geothermal heating networks in the world. 1 million people in the Paris region are already heated by this geothermal energy coming from hot water. The results from these 3 bets are in. We only account for 9% of the national carbon emissions, and they have fallen by 1/4 over the last 15 years. So 30% of the wealth produced in France in Paris region, and only 9% of national carbon emissions. And we are reducing our energy consumptions in all areas at a much faster rate than the national average. Air quality is also improving with a 35–40% drop in the concentration of pollutants in the air over the last 10 years, although we still need to make further progress in this area. So let's move on to adaptation to climate change. We are entering an era of unpredictability. Climate change does not just manifest itself in long-term trends, but also in sudden and violent events. Torrential floods, extreme heat waves, drought, and wildfires. Our two countries know this all too well. I think that Ttiki was particularly venerated in Greek cities as the patron goddess of cities. A Roman equivalent, the goddess Fortuna, symbolized both luck and uncertainty, invention and prosperity. Today, Fortuna, Ttiki, is in a dark mood, threatening at any moment to remind us of the need to adapt quickly. Valencia, in Spain, paid a heavy price. Massive flooding paralyzed the city, turning streets into torrents and car parks into death traps, claiming more than 220 lives. In the Paris region, the latest forecasting exercises show that rainfall is likely to increase between 10% to 30% by 2070. So we are preparing for this by removing the waterproofing on urban surfaces, protecting our wetlands, and reintroducing ponds to our region. We are also fighting to improve the governance and financial resources allocated to flood preventions. We are campaigning for the responsibility for flooding to be returned to the region to better protect the more vulnerable rural areas, which have experienced 4 major floods this year, fortunately with no casualties at this stage. But usually we protect Paris, but we do not protect the rural areas. So of course, Paris needs to be protected, but also the rural areas. As well as water, we are working to use nature to cool down our cities. In the 6th century before our era, Nabucodonosor II built the famous Hanging Gardens of Babylon. His ambition coexists with nature. His ambition to coexist with nature remains a source of inspiration. In the Paris region, we have supported more than 350 projects to create and redevelop green spaces, giving every resident access to a natural area less than 15 minutes from home. We have also opened up emblematic sites, and we are working to protect our 280,000 hectares of forests from the effects of climate change. The largest new forest in France is being created in the Île de France region. We are in the process of planting more than 1 million trees, over an area of 1,400 hectares. It's under the Roissy airport place. To combat heat waves, we have also mapped and meshed climate shelters, so that every resident of the Paris region can take refuge within 10 minutes walk. And we are going to make this network even tighter, because our cities also need to be able to protect an aging population. A sustainable city is also a city that takes care of its senior citizens. Between now and 2040, the number of residents of Île de France aged over 75 will increase by 62%. 1.3 million people will be above 75. And this longevity shock requires us to adapt our infrastructure. I want to make public transport accessible to everyone, whether they are disabled or elderly. And we are supporting adapted housing projects to prevent people losing their independence. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you my commitment and optimism. My commitment. The city of tomorrow will be 95% of today's city. That's a fact. So this means that our efforts must focus primarily on adapting and innovating within what already exists. That's a magnificent playground when you see the resplendent beauty of most of our European cities. But we have so much to imagine. In fact, this will be the theme of our 2025 Architecture Biennial, entitled Living Life. Living Life. But I'm optimistic too. This morning, I signed a declaration of intent with Nikolaos Chardalias. I will manage. Chardalias. To create a European and international network of regions committed to climate. The aim of our network is to share best practices and coordinate our efforts with international and European institutions and the Commission to facilitate access to the necessary funding. I look forward to welcoming you to the Paris region for the official launch of this initiative so that we can all share experiences. We all know the medieval adage, if the air of the city makes you free, the air of the city makes you free, it's because those who pass through the gates of the cities are freed from their former servitude. But the city is also a place where everything is possible, where everyone can free himself from his inherited social status if he feels the need to do so. At a time when I sometimes hear certain experts asking whether the alleged slowness of democracy is compatible with the urgency of climate change, my answer is a resounding yes. And I heard what the minister said, the finance minister said. So, yes, we can deal with democracy as long as we choose the right bets, as long as we make the right choices. And I know that Athens and Attica region is making the right choices. So, long live the Athens Talks. Thank you. Ευχαριστώ.